Hello everybody! So far I've produced videos on all the major methodological aspects of futures and foresight, including scanning for changes in the environment, using the output of scanning to build scenarios, and also translating scenarios into strategy for the organization where we do scenarios. Yet I've not covered an equally important preliminary aspect of futures and foresight, and that is framing a futures and foresight project even before it starts. In short, framing is really about defining as clearly as possible what the Futures and Foresight project is going to be about. Now, I don't fully consider framing a Futures and Foresight skill, and that is because framing is something we do in any consulting project, so it's a generic skill. Yet, it's beyond doubt that framing in the context of Futures and Foresight is super important, and that whether we do it well or not can determine the success or failure of the whole project. So in this video, let me share with you all you need to know to do that well. And as always, what I'm going to say now is based on previous references, and you will find all the references I've used to create this video in the description box down below. And also, just to clarify, in what follows, I will focus on the most common situation in Futures and Foresight consulting, and that is framing a Futures and Foresight project for an organization doing primarily explorative scenarios, and then focusing on normative strategies after that. So let's get into this.
Framing is really nothing more than a series of meetings and discussions with the organization where we do the Futures and Foresight project before the project actually occurs. Framing can be divided in three components: domain description, assessment, and logistics. The first component of framing, domain description, is all about deciding what kind of future scenarios we are going to create. This component really makes up the lion's share of framing, and that is why I will spend a bit more time on this. The domain description is made up of four elements: the focal issue, geographical boundaries, time horizon, and stakeholders involved. The first element of domain description, the focal issue, is really the subject matter of the scenarios. It is a sentence that indicates what futures we are going to explore. It can be formulated in two ways. The first way is a futures of X statement. An example of this would be the futures of university education, which means that the upcoming scenarios will explore different futures of university education. The second way is a how question. An example of this is how will kids play with what, which means that the upcoming scenarios will explore the different manners in which kids of the future will engage with toys and video games. Naturally, the choice of either of the two ways in which we formulate the focal issue is driven by the operational concerns of the organization where we do scenarios. The first is broader and includes many aspects of human lives. In our example, it includes learning, attending classes, graduating, etc. In fact, it comes from a Futures and Foresight project done by a university. The second way is narrower. In fact, our example reflects the problems a small-medium enterprise is trying to solve, in this case a company manufacturing toys and producing video games for kids. The second element of domain description, geographical boundaries, defines the limits of space we will give to the scenarios, and is generally dependent on the country or countries where the organization is either active and wishes to be active in the future, or the areas it has to respond to with respect to the focal issue. For example, scenarios with the focal issue, the futures of university education created in a university, will probably have to have global geographical boundaries, as the university will have to respond to global dynamics in tertiary education. On the other hand, scenarios with a focal issue, how will kids play with what, created within a toy company, can be local or country sensitive if the company wishes to or has to focus on the local market. The third element of domain description, the time horizon, indicates how many years into the future the scenarios are gonna go. The bare minimum is 5 years, but scenarios can go as far as 50 years or more into the future. Most cases range between 10 to 20 years. How do we decide the time horizon? Well, many elements are at play here, but the two most fundamental criteria are the rate of technological change within the focal issue and expected sociopolitical events with reference to geographical boundaries. As for the first criterion, we need to look at the focal issue and determine what technologies are embedded into it. The faster the rate of change of the technologies, the shorter the time horizon. For example, scenarios with a focal issue, the futures of computing, would have a very short, probably 5 to 10 years time horizon, while scenarios with a focal issue, such as the futures of real estate, can have a longer time horizon, even 30 to 50 years. This is due to different rates of technological change embedded within those focal issues. The second criterion depends on the specific context within geographical boundaries. If a major election will occur in 7 years from now within the geographical boundaries of the project, we have to make sure that the scenarios have a time horizon of at least a bit more than 7 years, so that they will capture the consequences of that election. The fourth element of domain description, stakeholders involved, indicates the various parties external to the organization that will have an impact on the futures examined in the focal issue. These might include suppliers, substitutes, customers, competitors, and new entrants, as in Porter's Five Forces model, but also advocacy groups, policymakers, and communities of interest. All these players will be crucial in the scenarios because good scenario work will specify how the various future changes at play in each scenario will impact each stakeholder and their responses. So, to sum up, the first and most important component of framing, the domain description, is made up of 4 parts: focal issue, geographical boundaries, time horizon, and stakeholders involved. An example of a complete domain description could look like something like this: the futures of university education globally in 25 years from now, stakeholders involved equal to, etc. Or, how will kids play with what in Japan in 15 years from now, stakeholders involved equal to, etc. The second component of framing, assessment, is all about deciding what the scenarios are going to be used for. This is different from the domain description because one thing is the content of the scenarios, and another thing is the objectives that the organization has in using those scenarios, although the two depend on each other. Assessment can be divided into 2 elements: expected outcomes and measures to assess achievement. The first element of assessment, expected outcomes, can be both organizational level, such as performance, innovation, or organizational learning, as well as individual level, such as creativity, engagement, or awareness on certain issues. The second element of assessment, measures to assess achievement, is all about the research instruments that will be used to determine whether the expected outcomes are achieved or not, such as surveys, interviews, etc., but also the data analysis technique that will be used. Finally, the third and last component of framing is logistics. In logistics, we decide all the technical particulars of the project itself, including who is going to make up the scenario team, how long the project is going to be, and how many workshops it is going to be made of, the amount of resources that the organization is going to put into the project, and, most importantly, what futures and foresight method is going to be used, a decision made dependent on the expected outcomes previously decided.
So I really hope that this video was useful for you to know all there is to know about starting off a Futures and Foresight project in an organization. Needless to say, framing a Futures and Foresight project appropriately can help you to build your case, convincing the organization that Futures and Foresight needs to be done, and also showing your professionality while you do so. If you liked this video, I would super appreciate to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!